vision received was that of blood cells, traveling throughout the body, supplying the much-needed oxygen and other nutrients to the differing members of the body to fulfill their purpose. Once the blood cells are spent, they must return back to the heart to be refilled before being sent out again and fulfill their purpose.
I just wanted to say, I'm so glad you said that, because we have close to us and not, other people talk to, what is God saying there? Well, I did all this and this door opened, so this is where God wants me to go. But yet you just had a revelation from the Lord that you could get the job, but that would be coming from your flesh. And I think sometimes we tend to, I think it's the unbelief part of us, or not expecting that God really is going to talk to us or show us something, and we move and we start doing things, and then, opportunities happen. And I've probably been guilty of that myself. So thank you for saying that. But the other thing I wanted to say, I'm going to say the other side. I met Carolyn and Jim 2021, 2022.
22, I think.
We started going to meeting place, or we were invited to meeting place. And,
Maybe 21, but go ahead.
It was after COVID. I know.
Yeah, it was definitely after COVID.
So
21.
I remember I was drawn to her. She came and prayed over us and sort of challenged us in the prayer, I think. But I was drawn to her because we were standing in the back. We had a little bit of church hurt, or a little bit of not sure what God was wanting to do. So I was like, I'm not jumping in here. We're just going to watch. And she came and prayed over us. But as we started talking to each other, she was talking about y'all. And she was talking about how much she was praying for y'all to come here.
Oh, yeah, I do remember.
Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
But it was like, and I know, and because we were teachers. So every time she found out somebody was a teacher, it was like, oh, my son-in-law is a teacher. And
do you know of any positions that are opening?
She really was. And actually, we did know of one that was coming up in our school. Yeah. I think we gave her the information to give to you. But probably, yeah. But I remember praying with her or praying for her, because she was so desiring. It was a longing in her. And but it wasn't God's time. So in the right time, y'all ended up coming.
I think they were out here 10 years before we moved.
Well, and then
but she was still yearning at that time.
She
told everybody.
Yeah, she told everybody. And it's funny because after they left and things, like you said, things kind of settled down. I really actually had no desire to move out here. Honestly, I was like, I'm not moving to Georgia. No, I'm not going to the same church as my parents. That's weird. That's literally, and it's kind of now thinking about, it's kind of like, being 19 all over again. You're not going to tell us. You're not going to tell me where I'm moving, because that's not in our hearts for us to move at that time. We were very much dedicated to where we were at our church. We were growing in our church. I mean,
we had friends.
We had a life. Yeah, we had a good. It was a good life. We had no complaints. We had.
Really?
Yeah.
Living in California, you had no complaints?
I mean,
I'm just kidding.
COVID changed a lot.
Yeah, COVID
really?
did change a lot.
Yeah.
But it was definitely at that time, we were very, we were happy. We had friends, our pastor was mentoring us. We were learning a lot from them. We were growing, spiritually, and obviously in our relationship as well. And being there during that time without my parents helped us grow, both of us grow spiritually as well.
Which I think might have been sabotage if he would have gone with his initial inkling. I got to save my wife.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would definitely not have played out the way it was supposed to.
Yeah.
Because those were key moments in our lives, both of our lives. And
to
me
grow
kind
without.
of, kind of relearning everything that I had been taught for myself.
Putting into practice for yourself. Because
it
sounds like you... And not in a bad way, but it sounds like you were living off the coattails of your parents for a time, and you had to get off those coattails and learn how to walk on your own instead of being dragged everywhere.
Right, with my parents. Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah.
So I mean, then 2 years, we would have people, our pastor was very God used him in the prophetic.
Yeah.
And so God would always be speaking in our services, and God would be moving and stuff like that. And now, there's very ample opportunity if God wanted us to move, that we know that we had ears to hear, if he wanted us to, we would okay, well, if God tells us to, and then we're going to.
Yeah.
We don't question that. But God had never told us that. It was definitely a pivotal time for us growing in pretty much our marriage, our spiritual life. You know, it was definitely a time that I don't regret ever going through. I those were really good like learning moments for us in our personal life, their friends in church, and like growing spiritually and how to be leaders, even though we weren't technically leaders at the time, kind of learning all
Not
the
when
aspects.
your parents moved, but over the 10 years.
Yeah, over the 10 years, we were kind of learning all these.
You grew into being
It sounded like you were discipled also. You were being taught, and you know, like a Timothy
to grow
and a
and to
Paul.
mature.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. And it was
kind of
like discipled into ministry, like because by the time, you know, we advanced, by the time that Pastor Vichuki, by the time he left, he moved to Texas, but I was the assistant pastor, you know, so I advanced, you know.
Yeah, God had just
to
moved
number
us.
2, I guess, you know.
No, I actually, I probably would have jumped on board with what she said. I think it was very important that you mentioned that on the podcast, because I think she said it, all of us have been guilty in our youth out of desperation to say, well, God is speaking to us because of the circumstance, rather than God actually spoke to me and said this.
Yeah.
And when you look through the scriptures and you look at all of the testimonies of the patriarchs, God is always speaking something specific about what he wants you to do. It's not like this general vague thing. I mean, he tells Abraham specifically, I want you to leave your father, your mother, your land, your family, and I want you to go over here, you know, to a land that you don't really know much about. Okay, well, that's specific enough that I can do something with it. You know, and sometimes in our youth, because we haven't developed, and it seems like in that 10 years, you developed a greater sensitivity for hearing the voice of the Lord, which is absolutely essential. I say that, you know, I'm sure I say that's the most important thing for anybody, is to be able to hear and discern the voice of the Lord, because that is what's going to get you through whatever is going to come in the future, regardless of whether you believe in a tribulation or not. It doesn't matter. No matter what takes place in the future, you will get through it by the Lord's hand if you're able to hear and discern his voice. But a lot of times in our youth, because we haven't developed that sense, that relationship, that communication, we in our desperation, well, if the Lord opens the door, or if the Lord closes the door, that's the Lord. And it's like,
or sometimes if nothing happens, then I'm going to do this.
Right. Right. And none of that is the Lord speaking to you.
Yeah.
Yet when you go into the scriptures, he's speaking constantly to his people, and he's directing them, he's instructing them, he's telling them, you know, and a lot of times we might make a decision and the Lord puts us through something. But if we're honest, we can go back and realize the Lord didn't tell me to do that. Now, did good things come out of that decision? Yeah, so did a lot of bad things come out of the decision. Well, what that means is that God is able and above, sovereign over all the things that we do, to still work out the decisions that we make, even if they're not what he wanted, for good. But it doesn't justify the decision that you made to go in that direction.
Yeah.
And it's hard for young people to just discern that little nuance. It's so important, but it's so obvious throughout the scriptures that it's not about, well, if he did it for Abraham that way, then he's going to do it for everybody else exactly that way. No. What you're missing is that when you see all the testimonies of Noah, of Abraham, of David, of all the prophets,
Joseph,
he's speaking something to them, and they are responding in obedience. That's the only commonality amongst all of that. And so that's what he needed to teach you. It's not about your parents' faith. It's not about your pastor. It's about you listening to me. And then are you going to respond? Because you could have responded and said, well, yeah, let me go apply to Georgia. It just makes sense. It's common. It's illogical. But you did it. You responded the way you needed to. And your development, you know, the 7 levels of maturity that I've gone through, that was a part of it. It's learning to hear the voice of the Lord and not doing it your way. Because doing it your way is eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And that that always ends in you suffering. Now, and you would suffer not for righteousness' sake. You will suffer because you made a bad decision and you didn't listen to the voice of the Lord when he wanted something else for you. So I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, I'm actually terrified to make a decision that's not God's will.
Yeah.
Like, I'm very slow to make decisions. I'm not rash. if you were to come tell me make a split decision right now, I'm just gonna say nope.
Yeah.
We're gonna wait. So
you're probably a good consumer shopper.
So
you'll wait. You see the sale, but you'll wait and you'll see and you'll measure and you'll compare. Yeah.
So thinking about moving here, it's like I do not want to move out of my own self. It has to be from God. I was just absolutely terrified to get that decision wrong because of what you said, all the ramifications that could happen. And he can still turn it and make things right after the fact, but you still got to reap the seed that was sown.
Right.
And so we were very much, this has to be from God for us to move. Has to be.
So those 10 years were great. That's what we gather. 10 years of development, staying in California after your parents moved were really great. And then God didn't really tell you initially to move on anywhere. He wanted you to grow where you're planted, not in a pot, grow there with those roots and stuff. And so your faith grew. It's not about you being in a particular location, but that your faith grew and your tentacles really grew out and grew in the depth of the earth. And then, but you did move.
Yeah.
So what happened?
So 10 years, that would probably have been 10 years after your parents moved. Our pastor and his family decided to move to Texas. And it was very out of the blue, very much like, hey, I'm leaving next week. It was very, very difficult. These were
the people that mentored you for 10 years?
So the church, I wouldn't change anything. We got a crash course of ministry. I mean, we saw everything that they did. We followed them. I mean, I would not be the leader I am today without going through. There's something about going through a small church where you can really get some real ministry experience real fast. And so I'm so thankful for that. But the church never grew. I mean, we stayed between 30 and 50 people for 10 years. We probably baptized 200 people, but just nobody, we just never really stayed for X, Y, Z, every reason under the sun. And so, we went out to Starbucks one day. He said, hey, let's go get coffee. And here I am just thinking, hey, this pastor and I are going to go, have coffee.
They did that all the time.
We do that all the time. And he says, I'm leaving. And I'm leaving in 3 days.
Oh, wow.
I'm leaving in 3 days, and I think you should take over the church. So my whole world is just rocked, thinking I didn't have a desire to be a senior pastor. That wasn't what I wanted. And, but I said,
Lord, sir, and Dylan tell me that.
But I said, God, if this is what you want for my life, then I will do it. So, I actually got up and just walked out of the Starbucks because I just started crying. I'm like, I can't just sit here in Starbucks and cry and sob, in the middle of Starbucks. So we didn't even really have a full ending to that meeting because I'm an emotional person.
Were you more crying because he was leaving or because of the weight of the responsibility?
No, because he was leaving. I mean, we were close.
Okay.
We were very close
this is my mentor.
Did he have the same feelings?
I don't think so. Okay. As far as being heartbroken that he was leaving, I don't think so. I think largely too, we were so close to their kids.
Yeah.
They were like our younger siblings.
Yeah.
I think Mikey's 10 to 12 years younger than me. Yeah. And Mara's same for you, 10 to 12 years younger than you.
Yeah, she was my little, I never had a younger sibling. She was my little sister. So that part rocked us pretty hard too.
So we were just oh my goodness, our kids aren't gonna, they're not gonna grow up with them, we're just, our whole world's rocked. So she gets home and usually I'm already have dinner ready and no dinner's ready. I'm just sitting there on the couch.
I literally walk in the door and I'm and it's dark too, so it's kind of creepy, really. And I walk in the door because I came home after him because at that time I was working retail, so I wasn't getting home till a bit later. And he's just staring at me. I'm like, did someone die? Because it felt like that kind of mood was in there. I'm like, And he told me, and that they were leaving, and I was like, what? And it's kind of like, a little PTSD from my parents leaving. I'm like, well, now they're leaving. I'm like, who's it? Like, I spiraled.
You didn't drill them with a bazillion questions? Why? What happened? What's going on?
At the time, I think I was shocked.
Just shocked.
Because we never thought that was going to happen.
So, and then the other part was, he kind of left it as, I want you to take over the church, and you kind of need to tell me within the next 2 days if you'll do it.
Wow.
Because we have to tell the other leaders of the church, we got to have a plan moving forward. So it was probably the next day that we just kind of calmed down a little bit, and we're like, if this is what God wants for us, then we're in. We'll do anything that God wants us to do, we're going to do.
Right.
That's always been our mentality, okay, we'll do it. And we went and had a meeting with other leaders at the church, and they all were like, yes, you can be the pastor. Like, we will follow you, and this is this is fine. And we kind of had a jolt of like, okay, yeah, we have some ideas on how we would want to
proceed,
do some things differently at the church. And we were kind of going through the steps. And so he left, but his family stayed. So
for a couple months.
For a couple months, right? So he got a job in Texas. So they had to. She was for a school. She's a school psychologist. So she had to fulfill her contract. So she had to stay. Her kids were in school, so they had to finish a semester. They had to sell their house. So they had to go through all the steps while he left and started his new job in Texas. So during that time period, we're going through the transition of, them showing us, this is how the church finances work. This is how XYZ. Here's, how to pay the rent, and so that lasted for a couple of months, and then pretty much I'm preaching every Sunday.
Yeah.
But I mean, I had been preaching a lot.
Yeah, at that point.
I mean, that wasn't a crazy thing for me.
Okay. So you could balance that out with teaching.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then so I'm learning how to do that, and so and a couple months go by, and our closest friends who were going to basically take over the worship department because his wife was the worship leader. So obviously and then both of their kids are on the worship team. So we're losing 3 worship people, and a small church is a huge deal. Mm-hmm. So our friends who were going to take over the worship, they decided they didn't want to do it. That they weren't gonna stay. So now we're just like, man, what are we gonna do? Like, this is a big deal. Mm-hmm. And we or maybe me first, I think it was actually both of us together, I just felt Jesus say, it's okay. This is not your burden to bear. You don't have to hold on to this dying church, essentially. It's dismantling. You don't have to. I mean, we would have been sacrificing a lot. Mm-hmm. Yeah. When it wasn't on our hearts to be a senior pastor, like take Pastor Joe, it was his heart to be a senior pastor. That's what God put on his heart. God did not put that on my heart. So I really do think he did see our willingness that we were going to do whatever he wanted. And then he just really spared us of having to go through that. So, the church dismantled in like May, and then we started going to another church.
Was it an independent church or?
Yeah, we were independent.
Yeah, we were independent. Yeah, we weren't part of like an organization.
So they weren't going to send us.
So you were renting, nothing was owned?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really we had it last Sunday, and then most of us went together to another church.
They actually, like, a lot of the people from the church were like, well, hey, where are you guys going? Because they
They're
trusted
find
us.
A place.
Yeah. I mean, they're trusted, like, we're probably good if we're going where they go.
Yeah.
So we ended up going to another church, that's a whole other story. But I knew from family experiences that I knew who the pastor was. Like, I previously, there's ties between us and their family. And so like I remember going to our room and like sitting there and just like looking up all the Pentecostal churches, in the area, like the ones that we knew believed kind of what we believed. And I'm like, being there my whole life, like we knew a lot of churches, like we knew a lot of people who ran churches, and we're just like, this doesn't seem like this is the type of church that we would belong to. Like just things that we kind of started looking, we needed out like the different churches. And there really wasn't very many options at the time. There's a big church there, which was never going to be an option for us because they were very just like superficial. They're very
mega church
type status, like that type of feeling.
Yeah.
There are a couple of smaller churches, but we're like, we weren't opposed to going to a small church because that's what we'd pretty much been raised in. I mean, it's my family, like I'd been raised in small churches my whole life, really. So trying to find one was like, okay, well, I'm like, well, kind of funny because at that time I kind of established my career as working in a vet hospital, and someone who was a part of, actually a couple people who went to that church that we ended up going to, I knew previously. When I was a kid, like they knew me as a kid, and they would come to they bring their animals, so I'd like run into them fairly often. And then one of them was really close to my mom, and she's like, because I mentioned, hey, our church is kind of dismantling, we're just trying to find a place to go, and she was like, well, hey, come to the church that was called City Grace. I was like, I mean, we had looked at it. We're kind of before making any decisions. Obviously, we pray about it, but we also research things. So we want to look up and see kind of what their beliefs are. I kind of knew what their beliefs are, but making sure everything lined up with what we were kind of looking for. And I mean, I'm like, okay, dude.
It was the only option.
It was really the only. It really was.
It was the only option.
There was no other church.
Yeah, there really was no other place that we felt like would be a place that we would fit. Really, at that time in our lives, it was definitely
because we didn't want the really strict standards church, but we also baptism in Jesus' name was incredibly important. Because if I'm bringing somebody to church and they're not baptizing in Jesus' name, I couldn't sit well with that.
It's not emotional.
And so the mega churches, they weren't going to hold to that. And the super conservative churches, we just didn't align with that. And they were the only one in the whole area.
Yeah. And we're talking about 40 miles, 40 minutes around where we lived. We looked everywhere. And this was the only one that kind of fit what we were looking for.
So we went there for 2 years.
Yeah, about 2 years.
Before we moved out here.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of interesting because being in as an adult, I'd been under that previous pastor for 10 years, right? So going to a new church, even though I knew some people, it still felt weird. I'm as an adult, I'm this is kind of our first big experience of going somewhere else other than where we previously gone. But it's kind of we went in there and for me it was fairly immediate. I was this is where we're gonna be right now. This was I felt God moving. It was definitely a confirmation. This is where we're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And you still felt I should stay in California.
Yeah, at that moment, we still. And we connected immediately with the church. And,
the pastor and
and it wasn't even very long they brought us on board in leadership roles and
months, 3 months.
By the time we left, I wasn't officially a board member, but I was pretty much there. When the pastor went on sabbatical, I had to do a lot more stuff, and and so. It was home, and we had a lot of friends, and really liked it, and so the catalyst. So all of that, the catalyst. Okay, why are we in Georgia? Was so all of her family's gone, and little by little, my family was leaving California. So my brothers had both moved to. One was in Idaho, one was in Washington. So they had left. So then it's just my parents. They're only ones in Northern California. I had
everyone.
Yeah, I still had another brother, but he's living in Southern California.
Okay.
And so in Northern California, it's just my parents. And then they gave us an 18-month warning. They're in 18 months we're moving, and we're going to be moving up to Spokane, Washington. And then of course they're we like you to come too. So that was the moment where we then felt, okay, God is going to move us. We knew for 18 months that we were going to move. But we didn't really at the time know, okay, are we going to Washington or are we going to Georgia? Mm-hmm. And we went to Washington. We went to a church in Washington. I was looking at schools in Washington. We were researching churches. We drove by houses. We looked at houses. Like we were going through neighborhoods. Like we really were leaving it up to God. Like, okay, we got two options. Where do you want us to go? You're going to have to tell us. You're going to have to like turn our hearts, and because California at that time, again, COVID just changed the whole landscape. It was very toxic to live in California. I don't want to get all into that. I think everybody that listens to the podcast can probably understand. And
that road shut pretty fast as far as options. We just
knew, and we were never going to buy a house, like never. Mm-hmm. As a teacher, there's no chance I was ever going to buy a house in California. Right. But we could in Washington and we could in Georgia, and we had family in both places. Mm-hmm. So then is it my family or is it her family? And we're very close to my family. We lived with my parents for the last 2 years of being in California, and there's a bond there, and and obviously my brothers are having kids, and I'm close to my brothers, and I mean it would have been family wise would have been great. Mm-hmm. Church wise, there's nothing up there. Mm. I mean, there's churches. Obviously, you go anywhere, there's churches. Yeah. But it was super conservative or mega church that had a Pentecostal vibe to it, right? Because obviously, there's all kinds of churches everywhere. But if we're talking about just spirit-filled churches, uber conservative, or we're a big mega church and we kind of allow a lot of stuff to happen. Yeah. And there was just what we fit in was not there at all. Yeah.
They just had the extremes, no spectrum in between.
Yeah. And I mean, even when we went to go visit his brother, brothers, we went and stayed there specifically to kind of get a landscape of everything. And at that point, and that was that like fall? It was like fall. I'm like, I kind of God had already been like working on me, because we went and visited my family the summer before, and I'm like, this sounds corny, but we were actually on the boat, and we were kind of out in the lake, just kind of hanging out. And I was just kind of just hanging out in the water, and it's like kind of like a weird like a piece of like this is where you're gonna be, and I was like, what? Like that was not what I was expecting. So I was like, okay, well. I don't think I told you right away that happened.
You're afraid to tell me?
I was scared. I mean, honestly, because we're kind of two kind of different people how we see things. He's very like, I need deal right now, like right here. And I was kind of like, well, what about this? What about, things down the road? Like I was kind of thinking ahead of time, which is fine because there's a lot of decisions that were having to be made in that time. And then when we went to go visit,
you guys are very odd and unique in that sense. You're just like you're the opposite stereotype that I'm expecting. Every time you say it's like, really?
It's definitely we get that often. Okay. But when we went to go visit his brother in fall, like I in my heart knew I'm like this is not it. Mm-hmm. This is not what we're gonna be. And I love his family. His family's awesome. Like they're perfect. They're a great family. I love being around them. I get along with all of them super well, and so like that was like I'm not going to tell him this because I know that would be really hard for him to not be around his family. So I was like, nope. I'm not going to say anything. We're still going to like God. You're going to have to make it obvious, basically, as far as more so for him. Because at that point, my heart started kind of turning to where I'm like, well, the idea of going to Georgia is not that big of a deal. It doesn't seem like it's going to be that bad if I go to the same church as my parents. Like all those like things that I was like not going to happen. Started kind of changing again. I was like, really? Like, just kind of like that's how God was like working with me pretty much my entire life. But I knew even when we were in Washington that that's not where we were going to be. Yeah. And I just kind of had to let the process kind of like work itself out with Scott because I knew I'm like wherever he goes, that's where I'm going. Whether it's God tells him this is where we're going, I'm like, okay, that's where we're going. If it's Washington, it's Washington. If it's Georgia, it's Georgia. I'm trusting God speaking to Scott about making, these decisions. Because he's always gave us direction. Yes, like the last minute most of the time. But I've always trusted that God's going to speak to him and lead us in the direction that we were supposed to go. So I had confidence in that. It's like anytime now you can tell us, not make it to like the last minute.
So when did he say? What did he say?
I think it was probably December or January is when I just felt, I was like, okay.
This is the middle of the school year.
Middle of the school year.
Okay.
And, you start gearing up into February and March. That's hiring season for the next school year. Yeah. So you got to make a decision, you got to get your letters of recommendation ready. You got to make sure your credential transfers. You got to get all your ducks in a row and you find where we're going to live, and I just felt in my heart that it was going to be Georgia. I called Joe on the phone, Pastor Joe, and asked him questions about church. I had met him because we'd come out and visited, but now I'm looking at it, the meeting place as being a possible church for us. So I had some questions for him, XYZ. He answered all of them great. I was like, okay, we align on our thought process, and I knew scripturally we aligned, but there's some other things. I was like, okay, hey, my wife wears pants. I have a beard. Are we okay? And
was he giving you the recruiting pitch?
Not really. He didn't
to come to Georgia or anything.
He didn't. No, I think he was letting God play that out. Obviously he was encouraging. Yeah, come out here, be part of the church, and we'd love to have you. All that kind of stuff. But he wasn't laying it all thick or anything.
Okay,
not yet.
Yeah. So
because I'm surprised, but yeah, I know eventually he will,
because we didn't know him very well either.
Yeah.
And so in January, then that's when we told my parents, that was very difficult to tell them, we're going to Georgia, we're not following you. So that was very tough. And then obviously I had to tell my school, which I taught there for 11 years. Very connected, I was the leadership teacher, I was the activities director, I had really close colleagues, and very connected to the school. And so that was heartbreaking to tell them that I'm leaving, and that came out of nowhere to them. That was not on their radar that I was leaving. So then I started applying to jobs in Georgia and had Zoom interviews, and we bought a house without ever stepping foot in it, we just through videos. And
we literally called Brooke. We're like, because when he'd accepted the job, we found out, we didn't tell my family, this was not planned, but he found out like March 31st that he had got the position, right? Or the last day of March. I don't know if March was 31 days. But anyways, so we texted my family April 1st, just being oblivious to being April Fools, right? And so we text the whole family saying, hey, we're moving to Georgia. And I was like, this is not an April Fool's joke, so I want to be just like, we weren't like messing with them or anything like that. And of course, they were extremely excited. My parents kind of probably knew a little bit before that we're going, but
they knew we were applying for jobs and stuff, because we couldn't move without getting a job.
Yeah. So like when we called.
Carolyn knew 10 years before.
Yeah.
We were gonna stay in California if I wasn't able to find a job.
Yeah.
I was confident I was going to find a job. My resume was pretty strong at that point, and there was beginning to be a teacher shortage. So like I was going to find a job in Georgia or Washington. Like that wasn't going to be a problem.
And as soon as he found out where he was going to go, that's when we always knew, even before meeting place, anything like that, we always knew we liked the Lawrenceville area. Even when we came to visit my brothers, because we'd come here
once a year,
probably once a year, to come visit, stay with my parents, whatever. But we always knew we liked the Lawrenceville area. That's always a place that we kind of were drawn to before even moving here, before even contemplating buying a house. Like, we knew we wanted to be in that area. And then once we knew the churches in Lawrenceville, like, stuff kind of started playing out where we're like, that's perfect. That's where we want to be. But then we called. I remember either calling or FaceTiming Brooke, because Brooke was, she's a real estate agent. So she pretty much was our feet, like, on the ground, finding us houses. People thought we were insane to buy a house without even stepping foot in the house. Like, we were literally shooting us videos of the house.
Well, that's news to me. I didn't know you did.
Yeah, well, I mean, we had like a process. We had her go, she like took videos of it, and then my parents, who knows more personally, would come and be like, yeah, this is this. And we're like, we're not buying the house until you guys both agree on a singular house. So it was, people back in California thought we were insane.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, like that's probably not, it's not a normal thing.
Were you saving up the whole time to be able to purchase the house?
Yes. So that was, we paid off all of our debt, had a chunk of money, went through Dave Ramsey essentially. That's who we were following.
Yeah.
Did through all 3 steps and, paid off debt and got our deposit and had some help from family and all the things that allowed us to buy a house.
I mean, literally, like, everything just like lined up perfectly as far as.
And she got a job without.
Like, I had like 7 places.
Without
like,
physically being.
Yeah.
She did all of her interviews on Zoom and stuff too, and so we both got jobs and a house before we even moved.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everything just like, and then my job wasn't far,
And that's how God works too, right? Like, when it's His will, things are going to be easy.
Yeah, and it's His time.
It's His timing, right? Like, the process leading up to it sometimes can be very challenging and can really test your faith. But when it's go time, it should be pretty smooth going together. Just everything just lines up perfectly.
Yeah.
Everything up until us moving here, and like the day that we got here was our pods came the day before, so everything was pretty much at our house ready to be unloaded.
Yeah.
And it's pretty crazy how that all, it played out pretty seamless, really. Yeah. It was not fun driving across the country in the middle of summer, but
with 3 cats.
With 3 cats at the time. But we've always been like, if God's going to open the door, if it's the direction He wants us to go, and if He doesn't, then that's not where we're going to go. We're not going to do anything unless He tells us.
If you were blessed and appreciate listening to this podcast and you would like to support us in our efforts, consider lifting us up in prayer first. Then remember these 4 social media buzzwords: share, like, subscribe, or follow. Share this podcast link with someone else by text, email, or word of mouth in the hopes that they might be uplifted as you were. Like by leaving a positive rating or review with whomever you listen to our podcast with. Subscribe to support the show monetarily with the link in our podcast description. Follow us on all our social media platforms. May God bless you and make you prosperous in Him as you listen and obey His voice.